Whew. All right, guys.
Timer started.
Today we're going to be doing another podcast. No surprise. Maybe a couple weeks from now we'll do a gaming video. Maybe we won't. That's Louis' decision. Today, though, we're actually...
edit it.
Yeah. We'll be actually going into films this time. I remember we talked about a while back during the Star Wars podcast that we would be segueing into films, and now is the day, and the film we're doing today specifically is a little something called Apocalypse Now. So...
You had to say it twice?
A little something, you know? Yeah, like to specify how little it was.
3 hours long.
All right, moving on.
They got here at 6 o'clock, and it is now 10 o'clock, and we are starting this.
Shh. It doesn't matter. Go ahead, Cameron. Introduce yourself.
I just wanted to express my frustration a
That's
little
okay.
bit.
It was a little
I feel better
frustrating.
now already. And you already said my name, but I'm Cameron.
Well, you didn't say it all cute and shit.
Because Mama didn't raise no bitch.
She did a few weeks ago, I guess.
And then
That's fair.
I'm your man, Louis. All three of us have somewhat of a background in film. I studied it at CRC for a while, and it's also what I plan to go into. Cameron's studying it right now at
ARC. And I did it at San Francisco State.
And Sergio just follows it.
Yeah, I'm not professional whatsoever. None of us are professional, but we are close. We're not. We just like them a lot.
I
If you're
hold the
professional.
opinion that you don't need a professional background in film to make movies.
Look out, critics. All right. Do you want to tell the audience how we chose Apocalypse Now? We watched it before we started the podcast.
So we have a list.
We've seen it before, though. Most of us.
We have a list of, how many is it now? 53 movies, which is growing every time that we talk about movies that we want to watch.
I don't think you're going to be able to zoom in on
But
that.
yeah, you won't be able to see it, but you can see just how much I'm scrolling.
If he
that
does,
it's
I
a
want
lot.
my face to be in it.
Yeah, of course.
And then
It's a
basically
sexy
we
face.
put 10, we put them in a random number generator, make a list of 10, throw those 10 into this hat, pick out a number, and whatever number that is the one that we watch. And in this case, it was Apocalypse Now. But
No
we,
regrets.
Did you
Great
take
film.
out 15?
What?
Did you take out 15?
No, yeah, I didn't
We'll
put a
look
new one
around.
in there though.
Not for now. Right now.
Yeah.
I just want to take
Well-
out 15 because I don't want to forget.
Yeah. Anyways, do you want to lead into it?
Start us off.
All right. Presumably, you can start, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows that if you haven't seen Apocalypse Now, I recommend you watch it. That's not me saying that it's the greatest film ever made or anything like that. I'm just saying you should watch it and find out yourself. It is a slow-going movie. It's a movie with a lot of complex themes behind it. It's based on a really old novel from like the 1800s, written like post, I don't know, like what's it called, imperialistic Europe or whatever. So it definitely has like a lot of commentaries on that. So expect a film that has a lot of substance to it and may be a little boring for people that kind of need to watch something, more energetic. So if you have no problem with watching a film that requires a little bit of attention, then feel free to watch Apocalypse Now. Go
And
ahead,
it's
Louis.
also 3 hours long, so you will feel those 3 hours.
There's nothing wrong with that. If
I'm
Endgame was
not
3
saying
hours
there's
long.
anything wrong with it, but I definitely felt those 3 hours.
I would also, if you are a lover of film, I would recommend watching it before you listen to this podcast. But make sure you come watch this podcast afterwards so we can get views. Anyways.
Or at least read the
Give
synopsis.
Don't read the synopsis, you bastards.
Just read, just
Don't you do it. You watch it for all the visual goodness.
You just called our fans bastards.
That was just a joke. They know I'm kidding with that. You guys know I'm kidding, right? No, I'm playing.
Anyway, so I think, do you guys want to start off with themes that we feel like were in the movie? 'Cause I came up with 2 right at the end that I wrote down.
Didn't go for it. It seems like you want.
All right, yeah, you want to talk about that stuff specifically. I was going to go scene by scene. Not scene by scene exactly, because
Well,
that
we
would be
can
exhaustive.
talk about individual scenes. I just want to start off with like the overarching
Mhm.
themes. I felt like the 2 most prevalent ones were the hypocrisy of man,
Mhm.
and specifically like the hypocrisy of a man at war, and also being true to yourself.
We noticed that like the hypocrisy thing that you were talking about within like the very the final minutes of the film, where Kurtz, the overall subject of the film, he actually mentions that he respects the Viet Cong because they are both moral. They are men of morality,
Yeah.
but they're willing to do such nightmarish things. And I know you kept pointing out. Well, you might as well go ahead and say it.
Well, he's the actual quote I wrote down was he in order to win the war, you needed men who were moral but kill without judgment.
Exactly.
Which doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hypothetically, what he says is like a direct. We're already skipping to the end, essentially. It's a direct I don't know, representation of what the fuck are you doing?
Spider.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's a direct. You fucking threw me off, man. It's a direct representation of the concept of doublethink. Doublethink was coined in the film 1984, or not the film, the novel 1984 by George Orwell. And it's just it's like a simple, like, it's a contradiction that people accept regardless. Like, America is a country that is filled with these double thoughts, this double think. To give you an example, it's like the idea of being nice to your fellow American, but also like beating the shit out of them to get to the top, in a capitalistic society. Things like, you're special, but you need to work harder than everybody else. But didn't you just say I'm special? Don't I not have to work as hard? Stuff like that. And so it's not exactly well, whatever.
But yeah, I get what you mean though, and I think that's very prevalent in this movie. It was like all of the
He kept being hypocritical throughout the film.
Yeah, well, not only him, but even like the leadership characters were all super hypocritical. But we can come back to that. Do you want to jump to the beginning?
Oh yeah,
because the opening scene is really
yeah. The opening scene is full of. It literally opens up with a napalm strike. It's pretty iconic. And then it slowly fades in. It's like an overlay shot of like it goes into Martin Sheen's character sitting on laying on a bed, half naked, doing some crazy shit. And he's like, I guess the insinuation is that he's hallucinating, and he's like thinking about the conflict, and he's like, because he's a soldier in Vietnam at this time, and he's kind of like the insinuation that most people might make is that he is being tormented. He's tormented by those images. You know what I mean? I think in actuality, it's like something I want to cover is that it's not so that he's being tormented throughout the film. It's more like he craves that. You know what I'm saying?
That was something that I kind of got in that too, because like he was, but again, it's that whole hypocrisy thing, and like
he says he doesn't like it, but he also wants to go back into it. Exactly.
That's what he said.
Because it's. Eric, sorry, go ahead.
Well, because I was just gonna say, like, people. He mentioned that like people in Vietnam want to go home, but when they get home, they want to come back to Vietnam.
Yeah.
So it was like.
And they can't really put their finger on that desire, and I think that's like a big difference between, like the common man that thinks they can still go home despite experiencing this shit, and a character like Kurtz who knows that you can't go home. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Truly go home.
And do you think that was like their attempt at like what PTSD is?
No, I feel like there's a difference. The PTSD is, I think, what it's trying to address, because it's based on Heart of Darkness, and Heart of Darkness is it's both, the way they represent it in this film is that it's both a physical place that you arrive to at the end of the river, and the river can mean various things. I don't fucking know. But it's also something somebody acquires. You know how we'll get to that in a little bit, but like how there's various stages throughout the film. There's like the first stage where they witness war and like its ultimate glory, but there's still morality to it. Like when Kilgore, somebody whose name is literally, it's an epitome of what the character is himself, Kilgore. You know what I'm saying? He's obsessed with war, but he doesn't see it as something like a danger. He sees it as a game, And despite seeing it as a game, he still has that emotional connection to his soldiers, to the enemy. Remember how like the South Vietnamese didn't want to give that North Vietnamese water, and despite that, he walked up to him and he was like, "What's wrong with you? Fuck off! This man fought."
But then there's immediate hypocrisy where he says that any man brave enough to fight, or whatever he says, can drink out of my canteen any day.
Hold his guts together.
And then one of the guys is like, "Hey, isn't that
go
a surfer
surfing
over there?"
He's
And
like,
he's
he throws
"What?"
it on the
And he,
ground.
like, drops the canteen.
Yeah,
and walks
but
over.
I know what you mean. It's just the whole point though is that like he still has that semblance of morality. You know what I'm saying? He's still like.
Right.
He obviously his priorities are fucked because it's all a game to him at this point, and all his soldiers see it the same way too.
Yeah.
To them, they're not far from home. They still want to get home. That's why they recreate home in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And it like even Willard's character mentions it towards the end, like during that whole shit, that it's like they create this home and it just makes them want home more. I think there's a big. I could be another theme too, like the desire to go home. I don't know. And, what was the next scene? What was the next couple of shots?
Let's see. Oh, I wanted to talk about before he gets there, the scene where they're all. It's like all the higher ranking people, and they're all sitting around the table.
Oh, yeah.
Eating like lunch or dinner or whatever it was.
You mean with the radio?
Yeah, and they play the audio tape of Kurtz, and it's a good scene. It lets you know a lot about Willard as a character, and it lets you know a lot about Kurt as a character, but it also puts into perspective the situation that they're in, as in like the people that they're following, you know, because all of the like, I don't think it was a mistake that he was placed around the table around all these higher ups while all of that was going on, you know.
And they were eating too. You mentioned.
Yeah, what I kind of thought of it at first was
that he was the prey.
Yeah, that Kurtz was Willard's prey, and so that's why symbolically they were eating. And because I specifically remember there was a shot of the meat in the beginning, and then there's another shot of the meat on his plate, and it's like right when Kurt's audio starts playing, if I remember right. And so to me that symbolized like Kurt is the meat that they're eating. He's the prey, and he's about to be sent on this hunt to get that so he can eat.
Yeah, and I like that. The way I saw it on the other hand was that they're listening to the mind of somebody who's primitive now, who's become at one with like the whole like heart of darkness, blah blah blah, the humanity's natural form or whatever, whereas they still have that semblance of civilization eating around the table. You know what I mean? That was just my like aspect of like the exact contrast between Kurtz's character who's fighting to survive between, you know, all these civilized characters that are putting on airs and like how the commander was putting on airs, and he was trying to like rouse Willard's character, but you know, it's so obvious that he's a man who's sometimes evil wins against the good in a man. And it's like you want him to kill him. God damn it, Cameron. This is what number is this? He doesn't just come out and say kill him, which is something that Kurtz himself would have despised. You know, I guess one thing that is very different between like civilization and like, you know, nature, man's nature, is that in civilization is where you find lies, whereas in man's nature, like true nature, you won't actually find a lie because it's a brutal honesty right in front of you. Yeah, what's the next shot you want to talk about? Unless you have anything to say.
No, not really. I just basically.
Also, Harrison Ford was in that scene.
Yeah, Harrison Ford was in that. I don't know why they got him in that for some reason.
Yeah.
That was
played a little nerd.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't mind. I didn't care about that part. It was just like, why would you bring someone that famous on? Unless
I don't know if he wasn't as famous. I'm sure he still played in Star Wars at the time.
Yeah. Anyways, back to that scene. I forget what I was about to say. Something about.
On the Notebook, you got there.
No. Anyways.
Cigarettes?
The civilization that they're like in civilization there's lies, and in nature it's all brutal honesty. That was another one of the things that like you don't really realize it in that scene because you don't really know Kurtz yet, but it's that like being true to yourself. I felt like Kurtz was a character that was very true to himself, you know, and like had an understanding of himself and what he's like, whereas like those generals and stuff were kind of like trying not to give enough information to they were being manipulative almost. You know, they weren't giving enough information to allow Willard to formulate his own opinions about Kurtz. They were just giving him enough to get what they wanted. You know,
that's interesting.
And manipulating him with how they gave him the information,
ordering,
like saying that he's crazy and that he's evil.
You don't need to know too much, is what they're saying.
Exactly. Which is something that I think is really just probably, especially back in the 70s, was more of a comment on society, because that movie came out in the 70s, right? Or
70s or 80s, not 60s. Still would have been black and white.
Oh, okay. Well, anyways, regardless, it I felt like that's something that was probably just a comment on civilization and society at the time.
Real quick.
Also now, I mean, it's a timeless
concept.
Yeah.
Real quick, you remember? Before I say that, you know how Willard was dancing at the beginning like a madman?
Oh yeah.
All right, I have a question that I want to ask you real quick that I want you to be thinking about, Cameron, you specifically. Do you think Willard went insane? Do you think he acquired the heart of darkness towards the end? You know, or do you think he always had the potential in it to get it?
He kind of had the potential of it
already.
Because like you even I think you said it like at some point like the only people that can survive the heart of darkness is like the insane ones or the ones that know how to survive or whatever.
Yeah, the ones that understand that.
Yeah, the ones that understand it. So to understand it, he kind of already had that sense of like darkness in him already.
Well, I think that like to add on to that, the only people that will survive are the ones that understand it. As they go through the different stages, nobody on the boat dies.
They're tests individually, you know.
Yeah, nobody on the boat dies until
they get past the third one.
And then the captain, Lawrence Fishburne's character, and then the mustache guy.
Yeah,
but
he dies right at the gates. He dies right at the gates to hell.
that's where they all start dying and they all can't take it anymore.
And the only two characters that are able to survive past that point are the characters that are mad, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's why Lance did that dance on the front of the boat that was very similar to
the beginning. It's like it's almost like, I don't know. It seems like that's when you start to reach that point, it's like that's when you're ready. You know what I'm saying? That's when you're ready to kind of like accept that the true existence of man or whatever the fuck it is, you know? Because I've never read Heart of Darkness. I've always wanted to read it, but like just from like the analogies and just from things I've read and seen about it, it very much seems like, you know, the Heart of Darkness is like the constant, the true nature of man. You get what I'm saying? And when they start like doing the weird dances, and it's almost tribal, it's almost animalistic, you know, like it's in their nature to do it when you tear away all the skin and the layers and whatever. Yeah, the kind of like the clothing that civilization puts on you, and it's finally like bearing your true self. The stages, like I wanted to talk about the different stages and what they meant. So like the first stage, you know, is like Kilgore, and like he still has that. He sees war as a game, you know, but he still has the morality to it, you know. And then we get to like the second stage, which is the fucking. Excuse me. Oh, I'm so sorry. We get to the second stage, which is the concert, you know.
Yeah, whatever the fuck that was.
I'll talk about that too.
I felt like as each stage went on, there was less and less of this.
Sense of civilization?
No, like this hypocrisy that was going on. Because I felt like
it became more honest.
Yeah, exactly. Because like Kilgore, like they during the like Ride of the Valkyries scene, they do the whole thing where it's literally like they show this like super peaceful village and all these like kids going to school and whatnot, and then the helicopters come in and just destroy everything. And it's super brutal. It's not like, to them it seems like they're glorifying it to themselves by playing the music and like Kilgore being like, oh, nice shot, you'll get a case of beer for that one. And they're kind of glorifying it for themselves, but then Coppola, the way that it was shot and what he chooses to show, it was not glorified at all. It was very brutal and
he even says like it's dishonorable when the woman, you know, she runs up to get her sister and throws a grenade in there, you know. And he's like, savages.
Yeah, he calls them savages, and it's like, did you just not see this? Like,
slaughter?
You just use all this advanced technology that they can't defend themselves against to just slaughter all of them, and then you're gonna say that they're savages for throwing a grenade in.
You get what I'm saying? Like the hypocrisy.
Yeah, it's super hypocritical. And just like, and then also like right after that, they land the helicopters and they get off, and then there's the little cameo of Coppola with the camera crew.
Don't look at the
like,
camera.
Yeah,
don't look at the
don't
camera.
look at the camera. Don't look at the camera. Keep going like you're fighting, you're fighting, and it's like it's very fake.
Yeah.
You know, they're trying to show something that isn't there, and trying to manipulate it. I guess it's manipulation too, as well as hypocrisy. They're trying to manipulate it to look the way that they want it to look, and not the way that it really is. I guess.
Focusing on the soldiers rather than the people that are being damaged.
Kind of makes sense because like Kilgore may have known that like, this is all serious and shit, but then he keeps fucking around saying, "Let's go surf. Let's go do all this stupid stuff." He might like maybe he's just avoiding the truth of this.
Well, that's what that's a great way of putting it. It's kind of like they were doing all this damage. Remember how they were like herding the refugees into the armored vehicles, right? It's an exact representation of that. He was the one doing all the damage, and then immediately afterwards, and Willard's character even mentions it, you tear a guy in half with a machine gun and cover it, give him a band-aid. You know what I'm saying? You get all these people in all these refugees in the thing immediately after you destroy their livelihood.
Yeah, after you created them.
Exactly.
You create refugees and then rescue them.
Don't attack! Don't put your weapon up.
You were saying that like there was a levels of hypocrisy. So what was the second one?
So he's saying like it would, at each stage the hypocrisy would be torn. There would be less and less.
Yeah. You get what I'm saying? What was the second one like then?
In the second stage, well, I just want to talk about what the second stage represents, and you can make your point there with hypocrisy. The second stage represents they still believe. So there's like there's 3 points about the first stage. Okay, they see the war as a game. They still think they can come back home from it, or they see the war as a game. That's like the first thing. The war is a game. That's where like the first. Normally, as humans, we don't think of war as civilized men. We don't think of war as a game. So that aspect of normal humanity has been torn away from them. Okay. I guess the next thing would be the thought that you can go home. Okay. The thought that you could go home is still there, right? So they're still like always dreaming and fantasizing about going home. And then finally, the third one is morality. right? So morality, they still wanted to take care of the refugees and their fellow soldiers despite all the damage they were doing, right? So they still had a sense of morality despite the fact that they didn't believe they were going to die because the war had become a game to them. Mm-hmm. We see the second stage, and now 2 of those things have been torn away. We see the morality is now gone, and we see the I think the what's the first one? The war is a game. We see that gone too, right? Or that war is a game. We see that war isn't a game. Because the morality's been torn away, because think about how they're like grabbing at the gorgeous women. They no longer they're beating their own soldiers.
I noticed that one because like then they started jumping on the helicopter,
exactly,
trying to fly away, like they didn't give a fuck about.
They did not give a single shit.
To get to the girls for some special reason.
That was at that, and in other words, the morality was at risk there.
Also, could still be like that is a game because they don't give a fuck. About
you're right.
You're right. So like it's still a game to them.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, when
that's a good way of reinforcing it.
So, yeah, it's probably still there. But it's definitely not as prevalent.
Well, I'm saying my bad. I didn't want it to be like the game is that was the third sign. I meant like in the first stage, their idea of war is already skewed. And so it's like 3 as a normal human before you start reaching each of the stages is like my idea of the whole thing. It's like how do I describe this? You have the 3 stages. To you, war is not a game. War is like an actual thing. You have morality and you have
what was it? The chance to go home?
And you have the desire to go home essentially. And then when you enter that.
I can see why that second one was at the second level it was gone.
Yeah.
Because like you see all this imported stuff. It's just like, do they really want to go home?
Well, no. I'm saying I still think they want to go home at that point.
Yeah, I wanted to point out one of the things I noticed, especially in the second stage, is that all the soldiers, the ones on the boat that were like kind of like the main characters, they as they came off the boat, they started being drawn to the things that
were like reminiscent of home.
Yeah, like he's like, look at the bikes, Suzuki, and he like pulls the
Sukiyaki. He was saying.
But like it's like they're bringing all that stuff over there, so it's like they don't really want to go. I see it as like they don't want to go home because like they're putting all this effort into like bring this stuff and
to bring home here.
There.
I would say the opposite. I would say that they want to get home. So like with Kilgore, them wanting it to make it just like home was making them miss home more. That's what I'm trying to say is that they miss home. That's the whole reason they build all this stuff.
I think that's the reason that they were going after the dancers so hard is because that reminded them of home as well. Kind of on the same
and they were willing to beat their own soldiers to get to that point.
Which again brings in the hypocrisy of like these are supposed to be their men, their soldiers, but they're willing to, as soon as opportunity arises, they're going to step all over.
And so that's where the morality leaves. Yeah. And then when we finally get to the third and final stage, home is like the last. It's like it's wavering, you know. Yeah. Soldiers, literally everybody. There's no morality. Home is like you have soldiers that are still desperately like they're trying to rush the boat, but that's no longer the case anymore. They've entered this fucking. They've entered this wonderland of like.
It's like more of a survival.
Surreal. It's survival. It was pretty surreal. And we still, but like there was a few soldiers that like were desperately trying to like rush the boat to try and take us home. They had like their packages and their guns, and they threw everything to the wind. They're like, I want out of here, right? And then we get further into the fucking shithole, and we have these dudes who are, you know, in tune with it all.
Yeah. There was this one like crazy maniac shooting his machine gun like at really nothing.
Yelling, yeah.
And then there was this one guy who was just like silent and very ominous, but then he like walks up.
They've accepted what it is, you know.
He just walks up and then he just listens, and it gets like very quiet for a second. You just hear this Vietnamese guy just screaming "fuck you,
GI, fuck you, GI."
And
so
then
awesome.
She shoots a grenade launcher, and then it's just silence after that.
My favorite thing about that scene is that guy with the grenade launcher and
who's the CEO?
Yeah, well, it's like, hey, who's in command here?
Or do you know who command is?
He's like, do you know who's in command here? And the guy's like, yeah. And he walks away. I really liked that. I thought that was a really good representation of where
they were mental, like in their minds.
Yeah.
5 minutes and 40 seconds.
Anything else? Oh, you said you wanted to cover the boat.
Yeah. Well, also another thing I want to talk about just briefly is that the third stage was like
a carnival.
Yeah. It looked and it sounded like a carnival, and then it sounded like as if someone just laid a bunch of gunshot and explosion sound effects over a carnival. And then visually, it looked like a carnival with explosions,
with the lights flipping around.
Should we get more into the characters on that boat though?
So
they were very symbolic.
Yeah.
I feel like that's how
you were saying.
I was gonna say that each one of them represent, because like the boat, they always mention throughout the film, don't leave the boat.
Yeah.
And the boat is supposed to be like this version of it's supposed to be their representation of civilization. I think in the river, it is their home. Okay, the boat is the only bit of home they have. Okay, especially as they go deeper into the jungle. And the way I saw it, I don't really know. This is just like something that I've come up with for a while, like in the last couple times I've seen the movie. But I feel like each soldier is kind of a representation of civilization. I don't really know how to put words to it. I'd have to read, like, watch the film again.
Like they had certain aspects that made him stood out. Like so, like the leader was like I think
he had a sense of duty.
He had a sense of duty. There was the chef with the mustache that he was just like he was done with the war. He didn't give a fuck about anything. He just wanted it to be over with. Then there's the teenager who was just like ready to go on.
He was energetic.
Like, he is 17 and the draft age is 18, so he clearly like did some illegal shit to get into the draft in the first place. And then,
well, I think the draft was legal for the 17 at the time.
Was it? Yeah. Well, but still, like he went through extreme lengths just to be part of this war, and then you can see how he's just really jumpy and he wants to get into the action because that boat scene where he literally just lights up the whole thing.
Yeah, he was jumpy. He was real jumpy.
Yeah,
and then Lance, I think Lance is a great representation of like fun in war, trying to find that fun.
Yeah, he kept doing acid.
He kept dropping acid and making it worse for himself. I don't have like an exact but I think that there's definitely something there with each character being an aspect of civilization, or at least something that you expect from civilization, and they all slowly start to die except for Lance. And that Lance is another character that I think he's a character that is accepted. He's ready to achieve that heart. He's ready to go back.
Drugs he took.
Maybe, I don't know.
Honestly,
he was high on acid.
I dropped a tab of acid.
That's probably the only reason he survived is because he was just on acid and he was just accepting everything that was going on. Like he even fucking stood up above like the bunker or whatever and took off his helmet and just started
and looked
at
around
that third stage as like gunfire was happening.
And so I think that's like I think why Martin Sheen's character, Willard's character, he isn't actually insane. Neither is Kurtz. They're not insane. They just realize that you can do the good, the moral thing, and the evil thing. You know what I mean? And in order to win this war, you have to do the evil things, despite being a man that believes in good.
But the evil things will lead up to an eventual good.
Yeah, the idea is that evil things will lead up to eventual good or something better.
Yeah.
And I think I think even Kurtz realizes they're doing evil shit there. That's why he writes in the fucking thing, drop the bomb, exterminate them all. And at the end of the film, they want to make you think that Willard, was able to fight against the inherent inner evil, which I don't think it's like evil per se, but like the tribal, existence of man. I don't think he successfully beat it though.
No, he was more resilient to it, but he still succumbed to it because he did like fall into that primal nature.
Yeah, I still think but to be fair, dude, I think he was always tribal. He was still sane throughout the film. We see him doing the crazy dance and shit, and he's not really surprised by a lot of things.
Probably drunk and drugged up as fuck.
That's true too.
Of the movie.
But like, where he's not even surprised throughout a majority of the movie at crazy shit that's going on. He's surprised a few times.
He's probably the most level-headed character. Like he's the.
But why? Like I know we see the Saucier and he's like.
There's like no context behind his character whatsoever. We just know that he's just like really level-headed, and they chose him for a specific reason.
Yeah, watching the film the first time around, I thought for sure that he was gonna stay. It was gonna like imply that he was gonna stay and take.
I think he does take Kurtz's place, but just not the way.
Not in the same context.
Yeah.
And not in that specific.
I feel like
village.
he took a much bigger role because like he left that village.
So we can only guess what happens next.
So he's gonna go out and do more.
Yeah.
So I feel like.
So if you're an optimist, you think he overcame the heart of darkness, and if you're a realist, you think he's just bringing it somewhere else.
It's a little bit of both for me. Was that like he obviously succumbed to it, but he is really resilient to the point where he knows where to go and where not to go.
Well, what about Lance?
Lance is a character that he was just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Everybody else had the potential to get it, but they're subservient to the people who can actually like withstand it. You get what I'm saying? Martin Sheen grabs Lance's hand, and even though Lance was able to successfully, like, the way I see it, Lance was able to successfully overcome all the challenges and all the stages and shit, but he just doesn't have the willpower, I guess.
That's
to,
why he needed Willard to take him out, because
Yeah.
he was just
gonna go with the flow.
into the society,
Mhm.
and I just started it again.
30 more minutes, let's go.
All right.
Bring up any other points. You said you want to talk about the boat scene.
Yeah, so I wanted to, before we end, talk about the boat scene, because that's one of the scenes that really stood out to me. That's like very, I would argue that the boat scene is more brutal than the Ride of the Valkyries.
Of course.
For sure.
But just on a smaller scale.
It's because it's not covered up by those airs anymore.
I would say it was more personal, because like you're kind of like how the camera was, like you were kind of on the boat, or you were hovering around the boat to the point where you can actually see everything happening.
Yeah.
When you were on the Valkyries or whatever, you're like a couple feet up, so like you don't see anything happening.
Yeah, it's very
you can
impersonal.
Just imagine what is happening based off the explosions and the gunfire and just people falling over.
Mm-hmm.
But with the boat, it was obviously more graphical, because you can definitely see the blood flying out of everyone's bodies.
Also, I want to say, to clear it up, the boat scene that we're talking about is the one where it's the only part of the movie where they actually pull up to another boat, and
the dude with the sense of duty, even though they're past that point, he still wants to do his job all of a sudden.
And he wants to investigate and search the boat and make sure they don't have any like weapons.
It's like, dude, it doesn't even fucking matter anymore.
So he makes the guy, he makes the mustache guy, the chef guy, get
check
on
the boat. And he's all stressed out.
Yeah, and he didn't want to, and then Lawrence Fishburne's character gets jumpy and shoots all of them. And
because he was gonna go search the basket or whatever, and then the lady just started charging the guy with the mustache who was on the other person's boat already.
Yeah.
And then once Lawrence Fishburne's character saw that, he just like, oh shit, and started lighting everybody up. And then everybody, or the rest of the crew, just started lighting everyone up, and it was just like a clusterfuck after that.
And that was going back to moral things. It's one of those scenes, especially when Martin Sheen's character Willard gets involved. Yeah. It's one of those scenes where it's like exactly what you're talking about.
Told you not to stop.
Well, no, where you have to be willing to do the evil things for the greater good.
I was about to say, like, now that I think about it, it definitely shows the darkness that he had in him.
Because
he's always had it to begin with.
Yeah, because they were saying like, oh, the girl's still alive. Let's get her to a med station.
It's too late.
And then he's like, no, I have a mission. We're not taking her. And then the guy's like, no, we're gonna take her. We're gonna save her. And he's like, no, and he shoots her and kills her.
He just can't wrap his head around the fact that you guys fucking murdered all these people, and all of a sudden you want to help them out.
And there's the hypocrisy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he's just trying to break the hypocrisy right there.
And that's what it is essentially. Acquiring the Heart of Darkness is realizing that you can't win the war by looking good for people. You have to be an animal.
Do all these bad things, but then it would lead to a good future.
I also I didn't think about it until just now, but regarding the dog that they pick up at that part, another thing that I guess kind of just noticed in us talking about it was, I think that the part of the reason that Lance survived through to the end is because he lost the dog when they got shot at, remember? And he's like, where's the fucking dog? Where's the dog? And he's just concerned with the dog, even though 2 guys just died. And he's just concerned with the dog. And that was like his last thing, pulling him back to
real life.
Real life and like home and like sanity in a way. And then he loses that, and then that's when he's gone. That's when he's gone.
It's really interesting. I didn't even notice the dog either.
Yeah,
I felt like there was a reason it was there, but I couldn't put it into words, and I felt like you did that.
I just noticed, like, when he was yelling for the dog, and they made kind of a big deal out of it. It was like they kept the camera on him for a while, while he's looking around and screaming.
That's when his character breaks, or when his character finally.
Yeah, that's his breaking point. Like they said in the dinner scene or the lunch scene or whatever fucking time of day it was. It doesn't really matter. Where the like general or whatever is like, every man has his breaking point. Kurt's met his. Me and you both have one. And I guess that must have been Lance's breaking point.
Yeah, that must have been Lance's breaking point.
And so just to conclude, the journey through the river and hitting all the stages is the like test or whatever to get to the ultimate test or whatever, to finally realize that the only way to win this war, or the only way to thank you for touching my leg underneath the table, nobody saw that, no I'm kidding, the only way to win this war in the case of Apocalypse Now is to become like the enemy, you know what I'm saying, is to fight the war in a dirty way. And so I guess we should there's a lot you can say about the Apocalypse Now. There's a lot you can say about tons of films, especially Vietnam War films. They have a lot of memes in them, you know.
Yeah.
Charlie, don't surf. I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an overall
should we do the next one right now?
Yeah. So we're gonna pull another number out of the hat. And,
So wait, should we
Take 15 out
should
real
we
quick. Go.
All right. I feel like we're gonna cut to this next part because we need a new number.
No, it's fine. We'll just.
You just want to pick one out of
Yeah,
this?
we'll just pick one.
If you just pick
So hold it above. So
Excuse me.
This is the hat.
Shake it up. Shake it
It's
up.
got fake blood on the bottom from a shoot.
Yeah.
All right.
Something we should.
Louis, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Number.
Don't be the Godfather.
1.
What is number 1?
Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the.
Perfect.
So yeah, we'll just finish it with this one. So number 1
Silence of the Lambs.
is Silence of the Lambs.
Jodie Foster, Anthony Hopkins.
So that's what we'll be doing next time.
I'm gonna shit my pants.
It's gonna be great.
That is sticky.
Can't wait
what
to
the
cry.
Fuck?
It's fake
Fake
blood.
blood.
Of
That's
course it's
disgusting.
Anyways, yeah, we have fake blood on the hat. We're doing Silence of the Lambs next, so that's very fitting. Thanks for watching the podcast. Do you want to do some sort of outro?
Yeah, sure. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to us ramble.
Again.
Yeah, again over nothing. The film's very enjoyable. I hope that you guys can go check it out on your own time if you stuck with us and didn't went to go watch it, beforehand. Yeah, that's it. There's a lot somebody can say about Apocalypse Now, and I'm sure we didn't cover it all. And maybe you have something that you found that maybe we missed, something we didn't get to, but
continue the discussion in the comments, and we'll hopefully be able to respond to it.
All right, thank you. See you later, guys.
Peace, bitches.